Hey everyone, it's Julia. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with my good friend, Megan. Hello. We are actually in her house in Athens, Georgia.
We are. Very exciting.
This is the second time we filmed this video, which means we've gotten to hang out twice lately.
Yeah.
So I met Megan like a year and a half, 2-ish years ago when I was filming Waterlands, or like preparing to film. She was working in the Adventures of Missions marketing department, and I actually have her job now, so I replaced her.
She did.
And somewhere in the process, we became good friends.
I love that. Yes.
So Megan doesn't have that job anymore because she's been, well, for lots of reasons, but one of them is because she's been pursuing writing a book that she's been on a journey to write for several years now. So before we get into that, do you want to just tell them a little bit more about yourself?
Yes. My name is Megan. I went on the world race, as Julia did, in 2012. And when I was on the world race, I saw just severe oppression of women. And it was kind of mind-blowing that women could be treated this way. I saw female genital mutilation and human trafficking and rape and abuse, and just really had my heart broken for those women. And so I started blogging because I actually went to school for journalism and quit writing when I worked for a newspaper and hated it. And so I didn't actually start writing again until I went on the world race and started blogging about these women's stories in hopes that I could help them. So yeah, so I quit my job, as Julia said, which is now her job, in pursuit of writing a book. And so that is what I'm doing right now, is I am blogging and I am writing a book, talking to agents, and it's great and it's hard and it's challenging, but it's definitely worth it as well.
Yeah, so as she said, her book is about human trafficking and women's oppression and her journey to understand that. So that's what this video is gonna be about. We're gonna be talking about her book, and then we're also gonna be going over things that you can be doing in your life today, right now, to become more aware and to become more active in ending human trafficking.
That's right.
So can you tell them the name of your book and what it's about?
Yes, so my book is called Her Story Changed Mine. So it's basically a memoir. I originally wrote it as a series of essays, but then I just kind of read like a depressing story after depressing story and figured that maybe people wanted some hope in there. And so I injected myself into the story because it talks about my struggle with seeing these women in these oppressive situations and how I coped with it, and slowly how I became an advocate. And so the hope is that after you read these women's stories, after you read my story, is that you yourself are inspired to do something and have the tools necessary to do something to help women in oppressive situations.
That's awesome. I think it's really beautiful that you decided to put yourself back into the story, because I think it makes it so much more relatable and so much more brave. I mean, one of my favorite things about you is that you're just relentlessly outspoken. And here's the thing about Megan is she's laughing, but not only does she always say what she thinks and always stand up for herself and others, but like she gets a lot of pushback, a lot of flack, and it's not like she's a stone cold wall, like it doesn't hurt her. Like she has feelings, it hurts, she gets her feelings hurt, she cries, she bleeds, you know, but she keeps going, and that's what you endlessly inspire me, because like you just push through the messiness and you push through the hurt feelings and the name calling and the like the mean things people say to you, and you just keep seeking to understand more, and you keep wanting to learn, and like, so that's what I think, I hope people will see, will shine through when you share your own journey, is that you, despite so much like opposition, you constantly continued on to stand up for others and yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't really expect opposition when fighting for women's equality, but I definitely have encountered some. But you know, the thing I keep on going back to is like, more than just, I mean, obviously it empowers me as a woman, but a lot of these women are in situations where no one knows their stories, no one knows what happens to them, and I was hoping to help be their voice. So that's why I keep going. I actually have, there's this one story of this little girl that I met in India who actually was like the catalyst of all of this. She was being raised in the red light district by a pimp who sold her mother, and was had a hearing impediment where it wasn't taken care of, so she was mute, didn't have a way to communicate, and was could have been prostituted at the age of 5, and like there was just no help for her. And so there was nothing I could do in the moment. I wanted to kidnap her, I wanted to go to the police, I wanted to do all these things, but none of them were options. And so I decided that, you know, it was time for me to use my voice on behalf of girls like her and women like her. So yeah.
That's awesome. I heard a quote recently where someone said, like, it's actually incorrect to say, oh, I want to be a voice for the voiceless, because they've been speaking all along, it's just no one's been listening.
Yeah, it's true, they have been. But oftentimes, like in those situations, they don't have the ear of people who are in power, and so
you're gonna help give that.
That's what I'm trying to do. So.
Yeah, I'm excited because I haven't heard every single bit. Like, I've heard a lot of her stories. I've heard the one she just told about Rinky a lot of times. But I'm excited to hear the whole story because it's having me reflect on my own journey of understanding this topic. And for me, it's just been like completely surrounded in fear. Yeah. So like I encountered it a little bit when I was living in DC, and then going on the race and then filming Waterlands, I encountered it firsthand. And when I was on the race, I just completely wanted to ignore it. Because it just freaked me out, and I just didn't know what to do. And I really only interacted directly with someone in that situation one time, and I was given many other opportunities and I just sidestepped them. But when I was filming Waterlands, we were in Siem Reap and we were in Phuket on bar streets, and that's when I really just decided to get over it and was directly interacting with women and men involved in all varieties of oppressive situations. And that's when I started to realize that, and I got lots of flack too, like, because I was talking about it in my video blogs, and I got lots of comments like, oh, well, if you don't have all the solutions, like, you shouldn't be even talking about it, or like, you don't know what you're saying. And the truth is, I don't know what I'm saying. I definitely don't know all the solutions. But one thing I learned is the more the closer I get to it, and the closer we get to it as storytellers or as women that are willing to talk, women of influence, the closer anybody who's listening to us is gonna get to it, and that's what matters.
Right. I know that I have felt that same insecurity, like I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know what to say, but that's just part of the journey and part of the process. No one, you know, gets a college degree without first learning how to read and learning how to write essays. It's all like this progressive process, and I think so many people hate the process. You're not gonna be there overnight. But I think the more you work towards it, the more informed you are, the more empowered you are to make a difference. And so I say no matter what your experience, we need your voice.
Yeah, so I'm super hungry and still really interested in learning more. And so that's another reason Meghan is here today. She wants to share with us some easy, not necessarily easy, but some things we can be doing right now when we feel like we can't do anything.
Right, so there's 5 things that you can do that are pretty simple. The first one you can do is you can inform yourself. So I don't know if you've heard about human trafficking, I'm sure you have. It's in the airports, they have signs about it, like if you see human trafficking, then say something, do something. But there's actually a ton of resources out there. And so I have a list of some books that might be good. So Not for Sale is one of them. There's a good documentary called Nefarious that you could watch that's really informative. And there's tons and tons of internet articles and organizations fighting it that you could have resources for. I'm not gonna go super into depth with those because I do have them all on a blog that has like a comprehensive guide of like everything you need to know to learn about human trafficking. So
yeah, we'll have that link down below. Meghan's blog is called MeghanTschanz.com, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's linked down below, and we'll have that specific page there, so you can, the documentaries, books, whatever, however you like to learn, we have that. She has that, not we.
We do.
She did that.
The second thing you can do is you can empower yourself as a woman, or if you're a man, empower women. And that might seem like, well, how does empowering myself or empowering women help women who are in the sex trade, say in the Philippines? Well, the answer to that is pretty actually simple. Men who buy women often view them as an object. If you're buying someone, you're probably not seeing them as a full human, or you don't fully respect them. And so the more that men who buy women encounter women who are empowered, the less likely they are to see them as an object. And even furthermore than that, the more that women gain rights in one part of the world or empowered in one part of the world, it actually spreads to the rest of the world. So if you look at New Zealand, for example, they're actually the ones who started the women's suffrage movement. I bet you guys thought it was the United States.
I just told her, she just told me that. I said I could have sworn it was New York City. That's what I thought.
It's, you know, it was actually started in New Zealand. And so that's just an example of one tiny country that was able to impact the Western world, right? So I think that anything you can do that is empowering to women, you know, standing up for the Me Too movement, you know, fighting the gender gap or the gender pay gap, and just so many other issues that affect women here in the United States. The more you empower and get behind those women, the more you're actually getting behind women around the world. So two is just empower yourself. And I know Julia's talent channel is all about that, isn't it?
Yeah, and if you're an empowered woman, that's just one more empowered woman in the world.
Right.
And we need as many as we can get.
We do need as many as we can get. So that is the second way. Number three, the third thing you can do to fight human trafficking is you can support social programs. Most of those women who are trafficked in the United States actually come from the foster care system. Some studies show up to 70 to 80% of women who are in the sex trade now who have been trafficked by pimps are actually from the foster care system. So if you think about that, just, you know, maybe volunteering as a foster parent, supporting your friend who's a foster parent, or just informing people, doing anything you can to support social programs that help kids that are at risk, that is actually enormous in fighting the sex trade and that women are not sold on the streets. And so that's another way that you can fight it.
Can you talk more about why most of the people are coming from the foster care system?
Oh, absolutely. The way pimps actually get women here in the United States is they look for young, vulnerable, insecure girls and they pretend to fall in love with them. They pretend to be their boyfriend. And slowly they start taking that girl away from any support system she has. So even if she's from a good foster care home, he'll, like, you know, slowly start saying, don't hang out with your friends, or, you know, give me your phone, give me these things. And after they do that, start asking her to do sexual favors on his friends, and that turns into beating, sometimes drug addiction, sometimes look at them addicted to drugs. And so it's really just pimps know how to look out for these vulnerable women and exploit them because they're looking for love and they know it, and they think once they have love that their problems are solved, but it's actually introducing them into the sex trade, which is terrible. And so the women at this retreat, about, I think there's 20 of them, and I think like 17 of them had come from the foster care system. Oh. So yeah, so it's a huge problem. So that's another way you can help fight the sex trade, is supporting social programs like foster care, getting involved in that.
Yeah, they talk about that in the Nefarious documentary about even in Eastern Europe, where a lot of those women, it's because I don't think they have a foster care system quite the same.
It's like orphanages.
Yeah, orphanages, so they don't have like much of a family that is looking for them or looking out for them. So that I thought for a long time that the majority of women in this situation were just kidnapped or abducted, but it actually makes sense that it would be a slower process. Yeah,
actually, I mean, that's not to say that kidnapping and abductions don't happen, but you know, pimps are actually, they don't want someone on the lookout for them, so they become their, you know, their boyfriend. They try and slide under the radar, and that way they can get away with like so much more. But yeah, so it's pretty rarely kidnappings because the pimps are looking out for girls that don't have a strong support system, who are basically alone in this world, and who not a lot of people are gonna fight for them to get them back.
So that leads into another way that I assumed you could help fight, is by learning the signs, because it seems like something you could be on the lookout for.
Absolutely. So there's actually a flight attendant who was on a plane who noticed an older gentleman and a younger woman, where the woman was clearly submissive, scared, nervous, and tense, and the older gentleman was not letting anyone speak to her. And she saw that as suspicious and reported it, and it turns out she was actually being trafficked, and that flight attendant was able to, you know, really interfere in that man's plans to traffic her. She was rescued.
Wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are numbers you can call and there are articles you can read to learn the signs. So if you know them and you feel like you want to do something, there are numbers you can call where all you have to do is call. You don't have to then follow up or go to court or anything. And so we can have that link down below. There's gonna be a lot linked down below, so make sure you hang out there for a second.
So number 4, the 4th thing you can do to help fight human trafficking is you can advocate for something called the Nordic Model, which is not, as Julia thought, a woman from Norway who is a model.
That's what I thought.
It is actually a way that their laws are set up in both Norway and Sweden, where they, instead of criminalizing the sex worker, they criminalize the sex buyer. So actually in the United States right now, I mean, it differs from state to state. Prostitution is illegal, but we often are actually prosecuting or criminalizing the act of selling sex, which is kind of silly because these women are 95% of the time victims themselves. And so it's like putting the victim in jail. So if you instead fight the demand by criminalizing the sex buying process, you'll find that it will, you know, slowly or even quickly disappear. So when Norway and Sweden started criminalizing the sex buyer instead of the sex worker, they saw prostitution drop to where it like hardly even exists anything over there anymore. And so I think one thing is just to do some research about the Nordic model and get involved with your local government and see if there's ways that you can, you know, change the laws and that, you know, that the sex buyer, the demand is being prosecuted instead of the woman who's being victimized.
So what can that look like though, like to change the laws?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess it depends on how involved you are in your political system, right? So I mean, probably the basest thing you can do is vote, right? There's not, I'm not sure how often these, you know, topics come on the ballot, but I do know that there's a lot of people fighting for that. So you could, if you ever see the Nordic model, like, you know, you want to vote for that. In addition to that, there's candidates that, you know, are more likely to support foster care systems in the Nordic model, and they usually are going to be around, you know, the same kind of person. And so I think just educate yourself about who you're voting for, what the ramifications of their policies are, if they're good, if they're bad, how they're going to affect the most marginalized people. So that's another thing that you can do. And the 5th thing you can do is, if you have time or money, is to volunteer. So there is a host of organizations that are fighting the sex trade and human trafficking around the world. One of the largest ones is actually International Justice Mission, and I'm actually a volunteer for them. I'm a Freedom Partner Coordinator. And so my job is to help raise funds for this group of lawyers, probably the biggest group of lawyers fighting human trafficking abroad. And so if you hear us, you know, pimps being prosecuted, it's oftentimes because of IJM and the lawyers behind that. I really encourage you to check them out, ijm.org. You can be a volunteer in your city, which like I am, or you can just donate to them and be a Freedom Partner. Another thing you can do is you can check out Wipe Every Tear. So Wipe Every Tear is like my organization. I love them so much. They work in the Philippines, and they take girls from the sex trade and actually put them all the way through college.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, all the way through college. Pays all of their expenses, pays for their children even, and just provides their needs and puts them through college, which I just love because it's giving them like, it's empowering them, you know, to make their own choices, make their own decisions, and not even be dependent on an anti-trafficking organization to provide for them. And so we've actually had, I think, 8 girls graduate now, which is huge because a lot of these girls don't even have an elementary education. So that is just amazing, and I love them. I try and go back to the Philippines every year to see the girls that I actually lived with, 20 of them right as they left the sex trade about 4 years ago, and they're like, we're like this. And so if you want to check out wipeeverytear.org, they're also my favorite to donate to. They're amazing. They even allow you to go on trips with them. So if you check out wipeeverytear.org, they have a list of trips available. I'm pretty sure I'm going on the winter trip this year.
Oh, which one? Maybe I'll go with you.
It's the only one that's in the winter. So if you look on, you might be, you know, we might go on the same trip together and we'll get to know each other better. And then another organization, which is probably one very local to you. So here in Atlanta, they have something called Out of Darkness, and there's actually several anti-trafficking organizations I know of here in Atlanta. But whatever your city is, just Google it and see local anti-trafficking organization. And I guarantee you there's places where you can volunteer your time or your finances and really make a difference for the people in your own backyard who are being trafficked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of really good stuff. I think the beginning and the basis of everything you're saying is just start learning and like be okay with like a humble attitude of not knowing a lot, and just be willing to learn a lot and to listen to people.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming on here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for filming this twice.
Yeah, of course.
If you want to learn more about what she has to say about this topic and about her upcoming book, you can subscribe to her blog, meghanschanz.com. And if you subscribe to her blog or follow her on Instagram, you're going to be directly helping her get the book published, because she's super close to getting it published, but because it's nonfiction, she needs to grow her audience a little bit.
Yes, I would love it and be so humbled and grateful if you subscribed either to my blog or to my Instagram. But if you subscribe to my blog, you actually get a free ebook. It's like a little PDF that says 11 things Wikipedia can't tell you about the sex trade. So just from my experience of learning, working with women for about 4 years overseas, and their stories and what they've taught me. So I would love that if you could subscribe. You'd help me get this book published. And yeah, I am so thankful that you had me on the show today.
The show!
The show! It's kind of like a show.
Yeah.
A vlog. Yeah.
So if the book, when more information is released about when it's coming out, will that be in both places?
It will be on both places.
Perfect.
It will be, so.
So if you want to know when it's coming out, you gotta follow her to find out. I'm not gonna tell you. No, I will. Thanks for being on the channel. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to this channel if you are new and haven't done so. Maybe you came here from Meghan's blog. Welcome if so. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Sunday. Bye.
Bye.
And if you want it, come and get it. Cry